It happened in the blink of an eye. 1 second, I was lying back, breathing slowly, eyes closed, heart open, falling deeper into stillness. The world around me seemed to quiet, like the calm before a storm, a deep, suffocating silence that embraced me. And then, I was gone. Or rather, I was everywhere, not drifting, not dreaming. It was as if the moment itself collapsed inward, folding in on itself like the universe was a great black hole, and I was pulled through the eye of it. There was no transition, no time, no beginning or end. There was just that one instant, that sliver of no time. And in that infinitesimal moment, I lived. 1,000 lives. The first was simple. I was a farmer on the edge of a wide, open field, the sun rising over the horizon. The smell of wheat in the wind, the warmth of the earth beneath my bare feet. I woke early, my skin sunburned from long days of work, but my heart full. My hands, calloused from years of labour, were rough with the texture of the land. There was something deeply satisfying in the physicality of my existence, the quiet pride of a day well lived. Every morning, I heard the song of birds rising with the sun, the music of life, pure and unhurried. I had a wife with hands as calloused as mine, but her laugh was soft. It healed things in me I didn't even know were broken. The sound of her voice was like music, like a lullaby woven from the fabric of the earth. We had 3 children. Each one was a wonder, their growth a fragile promise unfolding before my eyes. I never left my village. It was small, quiet, familiar, safe. I died content, in my sleep, surrounded by the people I had helped raise. It felt like peace. It felt like enough. But the next life was not so gentle. I was a soldier, caught in a forgotten war, a nameless cog in a machine of destruction. The world around me was mud, smoke, and the endless sound of gunfire, each crack of thunder marking the loss of another piece of humanity. My hands shook every night, not from fear, but from the weight of memories that would not let go. Sleep offered no rest. Faces of friends, no, brothers, blurred in my mind, buried in unmarked graves. They would never be remembered. When the war ended, I returned home, a stranger to myself. There was no triumph, only the hollow weight of survival. I drank to forget, to dull the pain of memories that clawed at my mind, but nothing could stop them from rising again. Then, one day, seemingly by chance, I met a boy. He was on the verge of manhood, his hands rough like mine, but still filled with the potential of something untainted by time. I taught him to plant a tree, and in that small, simple act, something cracked open inside of me. Something human, something fragile, but real. I felt for the first time that I wasn't lost, and maybe, for the first time, I knew what it was to heal. Then, I was a deer, no thoughts, only instinct, grace and fear. I bounded through dense forests, the scent of damp earth and moss filling my senses. Every step, every breath was alive with purpose. I froze when I heard the crack of branches behind me, my ears tuned to the predator's approach. The world narrowed to that single moment of danger, every muscle poised to flee. Once I saw the moon reflected in a still pond, and in that moment, I felt something. A reverence, a connection to the world I could never put into words. The moon, the stars, the earth beneath my feet. It all felt sacred. My life was brief, fleeting, like the rush of wind through the trees. I lived and died in a heartbeat. I was eaten by a wolf. But even in death, my last breath was peaceful, and the world didn't seem so terrifying anymore. And then I was the wolf. It didn't stop. The lives, they came in waves, one after the other, each one vivid, complete, real, not like watching someone else's life, but like being them. I was a blind musician in the 1800s. He composed symphonies not with his eyes, but with his fingers, feeling the notes, the vibrations in the air. He lived in a world of sound, crafting melodies born of touch and emotion, letting the music dance through his soul. I was a homeless child, frozen under a bridge in the dead of winter, my dreams of warmth fading into nothingness. I had no name, no history, just the longing for a place that would never come. I was a woman in an ancient desert tribe, laughing around a fire, her body swaying to the rhythm of drums, her newborn cradled in her arms, a part of a living, breathing world that had existed for thousands of years. Her joy was simple, like the crackle of firewood, the warmth of her people close around her. I was an executioner in a distant land, weeping after every life he took. The weight of the axe was heavy, but the weight of his sorrow was heavier. He hid his tears in the rain, but they always came. I was a butterfly, living only 3 weeks, a life of sunlight and wind, flitting from flower to flower, tasting nectar and feeling the delicate fragility of my existence. Each moment was a burst of beauty, a moment to be savoured before it slipped away. I was a tree, rooted in the earth for centuries, slowly growing, watching the world change around me. I felt the hum of the earth beneath my roots, the passing of seasons, the wind in my leaves. Time flowed around me like water, but I stood still, unmoving, patient. I was a mountain, immovable, timeless. I watched the world shift and change, but I could never understand it. I was not a part of it, but somehow I was. I was the earth itself, patient beyond comprehension. Not all of the lives were human or even living in the way we understand life. I was the lonely moon, orbiting a forgotten planet, spinning in solitude. I watched as time passed me by, unaware of my existence, my only company the stars who would never see me. I was a half-finished poem, crumpled and forgotten in a drawer, never to be read by anyone. The words I had almost spoken were left unsaid, waiting in the silence. I was the last drop of water in a dying river, watching the world move on without me. The current was no longer strong enough to carry me forward, and yet I couldn't let go. At first, I tried to hold on. I wanted to remember them all. Every life, every feeling, every small, fleeting moment. But that desire cracked beneath the weight of it all. You can't hold 1,000 oceans in one hand. And so, eventually, I let go. I surrendered. And in that surrender, something incredible happened. I became not just the lives I had lived, but the space between them. I was the rhythm, the breath, the pause before the first heartbeat and the echo after the last word. I was the silence before thought, the hum that holds everything together. And then I was myself again, except not quite. I was sitting in the same spot, in the same room. My body was the same. The air in the room was the same, thick with the quiet hum of life. The clock hadn't moved. Not even a second had passed. And yet, somehow, I had aged. Not in body, but in knowing. The air felt different, denser, sacred even. My skin hummed, alive with something I couldn't quite name. My eyes were full of something like tears, though I hadn't noticed them fall. It was as if I had seen the world in its most fragile, fleeting form. And the weight of that truth was too much to carry without some part of it lingering in my soul. How do you come back from something like that? How do you return to the mundane acts of life? Brushing your teeth, answering emails, folding laundry, when you've died 1,000 times and been reborn as silence. At first, I couldn't. I just sat there, numb and awestruck, quietly burning inside. I was still trying to reconcile the enormity of what I had experienced with the smallness of the world around me. But slowly, like a sunrise unfolding beneath my eyelids, something softer began to settle in. Compassion. Because now I knew. When I saw someone smile, I remembered the woman with the desert fire, her joy a fire that could warm the coldest night. When I saw someone rage, I remembered the soldier burying his friend, the grief and loss that fueled it. When I saw a bird land on my window, I remembered what it was like to have wings, to feel the sky as both a gift and a fear. When I walked beneath a tree, I remembered the taste of rain seeping into bark, the way the earth could hold time itself in its roots. Everyone I meet, everyone is living. I held the pipe in my hand. The lighter clicked, the sound sharp in the quiet room. The sound felt invasive, like a sudden break in the stillness, pulling my attention with an urgency I didn't understand. I brought the pipe to my lips. Inhale. Hold. 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 And then it was gone. No time to exhale, no time to even think. The moment was like a vacuum, a force pulling me in, swallowing me whole. The floor folded into itself, bending like the edges of paper. The walls crumpled sideways, as though they were stage sets collapsing under some invisible pressure. The air twisted, bent, and folded like wet fabric, warping, rearranging in ways I couldn't comprehend. I didn't just see it, I felt it. I fell, not down, but out. There was no sense of gravity anymore, no sense of anything familiar. I wasn't sitting in my room anymore. I wasn't me anymore. I was in water, but it wasn't like swimming, not like floating in a pool or standing in the ocean. No, this was different. I wasn't an observer in the water, I was the water. The liquid enveloped me like a second skin, like it had always been a part of me. It wasn't cold, not in the way I knew cold. The pressure wasn't pressure. It just felt right, as though I had always belonged here, as if I had never been anything else. I flicked my body once, a subtle movement, a gentle shift of my being. It felt so natural, so effortless, like breathing. The current brushed my side, and for a moment I felt a familiarity, an ancient call I had always known. It was like a voice, faint but persistent, saying home. I flicked again. My muscles I never knew existed, responded instantly as though they were my own. My body flowed effortlessly through the water, a grace I had never felt. My eyes, wide and round, now set on either side of my head, caught flickers of light that danced above me, breaking through the surface. I was a fish. Not metaphorically, not in a hallucination. I was a fish fully, absolutely, unquestionably. My mind didn't think in words anymore. Thoughts weren't like thoughts at all. They were impulses, sharp and direct, moving through me like electrical currents. I didn't need language to understand what was happening around me. I just knew. I knew the current was pulling me one way, food was flowing in another. There was a danger, a predator. I knew where to hide, how to move, where to explore. It wasn't a conscious decision, it was instinct. And then there was the feeling of the water, how it caressed my skin. It wasn't just an environment, it was me. It was everything I was. The water and I, we were one. But there was something more, something else. A faint pulse deep inside me, buried beneath my gills, beneath the scales that covered my body. It wasn't a thought, it wasn't a memory. It was more like a hum, a quiet vibration, whispering to me, saying, remember. But remember what? What was I supposed to remember? A name, a life. It felt distant, like someone else's dream. I couldn't quite place it, but the feeling lingered, suffocating me in its weight. I was drowning in it. It was a longing, but without an object. A hunger, but with no food to feed it. I swam through it, as the current carried me forward, pushing me further away from whatever it was I had forgotten. Years passed, or at least, it felt like years. I swam through tunnels of coral, where the colors shifted like stained glass, vibrant reds and oranges, deep blues and greens, all filtering the sunlight into soft beams. I glided through these beams, feeling the warmth of the light wrap around me. It was peaceful, almost sacred, as if the ocean itself was speaking to me through its colors. I slipped between kelp forests, where the shadows moved with a rhythm I couldn't describe, swaying to some beat only the ocean could understand. I darted through the thick, leafy tendrils, my body cutting through the water, a predator and a prey all at once. I flirted with death, the sharp, gleaming teeth of predators flashing past me, the deep blue of the open water beckoning me toward its unknown depths. I knew the routes. I knew the predators. I knew when to hide, when to flee, when to fight. The ebb and flow of the sea had become my song, and I danced to it. I loved once, in the way fish do. It was instinctual, pure, and real. There was no need for words, no need for reasoning. It just was. I danced in the moonlight with a silver-striped mate, our bodies spiraling, entwined in a ballet that only the water could orchestrate. We released eggs and milk into the current, a sacred ritual passed down through endless generations. It was joy. Not the kind you remember, not the kind you reflect on, just joy. There was no burden in that moment, no self-consciousness, just the instinct to live, to continue. And then the storms came. Violent, unpredictable. Fishermen came too, their boats like gods above, giant and looming, casting shadows over the water. I couldn't comprehend them, just the terror of their presence. Once, I saw a plastic bottle spinning in the tide, and for the first time, I felt a deep, ancient terror wash over me. It pulsed inside of me, cold and unrecognizable. Wrong. Not of this place. The bottle spun aimlessly, empty and foreign. It didn't belong here. It wasn't part of the rhythm of the water. Seasons changed. The water cooled, and the rocks grew moss. The currents shifted, and the shadows on the ocean floor seemed to move differently. I felt different, slower, older, wiser maybe. I watched smaller fish dart past me with the same speed I once had. I remembered the energy, the vitality that once surged through me. Now I was slower. I no longer chased. I let the currents carry me instead of fighting them. I let the sea do its work. But that day, while resting beneath a warm stone shelf, something pulsed in the current. A vibration, a signal, a tear in the sea. It wasn't visible, not in the way I expected. It wasn't like a hole in the water. It was more like a shift in reality itself. Like the ocean blinked, and through it, a face. Mine. I wasn't imagining it. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was my human face, staring at me from the surface of the water. Mouth open, eyes wide, terrified. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't something I could touch. But it was there, staring back at me, as if I was the one who was lost. I understood then. I was both, and neither. I was a fish. I was a man. I was something in between. I was a bridge between two worlds. The tear in the water widened, like a vortex pulling at my very soul. I didn't want to go. This was my life now, my home. I had children. I had memories. I had scales. I had a name, and it wasn't mine. But the pull was too strong. The pull of time. The pull of the surface. My fish muscles began to dissolve. The water turned to air, sharp and dry, leaving me gasping for breath. The instincts faded, slipping away like dreams at dawn. I felt the dissonance, the tearing of two worlds, and I resisted. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to forget, but I had no choice. And then I snapped back into the room, choking, gasping. Saliva dripped from my chin. The pipe was cold in my hand, lifeless. My heart was thudding, distant but heavy. My arms felt wrong, like they no longer belonged to me. My skin was dry, my lungs screaming. Where was the water? Where was the sea? I crawled to the sink. I let the water run, cold against my hands. I cupped handfuls of it over my face, the sensation sharp, jagged, a shock to my system. I sobbed, but there were no tears. What was I crying for? A life I no longer had? For fins that wouldn't flick? For memories slipping away with every passing breath? I don't eat fish anymore. I can't. I remember too much. I remember the soft push of the current, the way the moonlight danced across the surface of the water. I remember the joy, the terror, the pull of something bigger than me. And sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I feel it, the pull of the current. And I miss her. I took the hit. The world folded inward, not in darkness, but in a kind of thick, fabric-like sensation that tugged at my skin, pulled at my thoughts, and whispered through the inside of my skull. Everything began to undulate. The floor, the walls, my arms. They breathed. In, outside, in, outside. My skin stretched, and I felt myself dissolve into the atmosphere, into the room. My body wasn't mine anymore, and yet it was all I could feel. I tried to laugh, but my mouth had dissolved, become air, gone with the breath of the world. There was only the feeling of movement, the ebb and flow of existence itself, a presence, a pulse, a rhythm. Then I saw it, a clock. It wasn't just any clock. It was enormous, towering, ancient, brass and gold that gleamed like a forgotten sun, yet etched with the scars of time. It seemed to have lived as long as the world itself. And yet, it wasn't just a clock. It was me. I didn't walk toward it. I became it. There was no transition, no boundary. One blink, and I was no longer human. I was gears. I was weight. I was rhythm. Tick. Tock. I became the pulse of existence itself. But the ticking wasn't sound. It was pain, pressure, memory. Every tock was a sacrifice. Every tick was a birth, and there was no escape. The pendulum swung in slow, deliberate arcs, and I felt it like lungs inflating, the air drawn in and released, in and out. It was like breathing, except this time it wasn't mine. Time wasn't passing, it was breathing, and I was the lungs of time. I was responsible for forward motion, for the pulse of reality, for everything that existed, everything that would exist. The seconds stretched into eternities. I could feel the weight of every moment pressing down upon me. A burden, an endless pull forward. The turning of the hands was a cycle of endless sacrifice. I tried to cry, but clocks don't cry. There was no emotion, no release. I had no face to frown, no eyes to close. Instead, I exhaled centuries. Tick, someone was born. Tock, a war ended. Tick, someone forgot their anniversary. Tock, a leaf decayed. The ticking. It was so human, all of it. The births, the deaths, the small, seemingly insignificant moments that marked a life. I could feel them, each one, like a thread, weaving through me. The thousand stories of humanity, all happening at once. They were alive within me. But I wasn't just witnessing time. I wasn't merely watching the flow of seconds. I was time itself. I was the embodiment of every second, every tick of the clock. I was not simply a participant in the passing of time. I was its engine, its heartbeat. I was everything. But then came something strange, something that didn't fit. There was something else. Behind me, beneath me. Direction stopped making sense. Time had no edges, no limits. There was a counter-gear, a dark brass cog that turned against me, grinding back, trying to reverse the breath of time. It was subtle at first, a faint whisper, a tug at the very fabric of the world, a resistance. Unwind it, it seemed to say. Rewind the clock, unwind the world. History wasn't content with being remembered. It wanted to be relived. I felt it. That psychic friction. The past wanted back in. It clawed at the present like a tide refusing to recede, like a hunger too old to be satiated. The past didn't care if it was over. It wanted to return, to rewrite itself. I screamed or tried to, but my scream was just a misaligned chime. Ding! Wrong hour. The wrong hour echoed endlessly through the gears. It was a haunting sound, an impossible thing, an hour that would never come but would always be there. A time that should have passed, but hadn't. A moment that had already slipped through the cracks, yet remained, stretching back into eternity. Inside me, people moved, tiny ones, made of glass and regret. I could feel them, each of their fragile footsteps disrupting the delicate rhythm of the clock. Lovers arguing in kitchens, a child skipping stones across a pond, a man waiting to die, uncertain, pacing. These weren't just memories. They were timelines, branching inside me. They were lives, moments, all running parallel, intersecting, colliding. I wasn't just one reality. I was all of them. Every possible version of existence, every potential life lived within the confines of this mechanical body. The weight of it crushed me. The thousands of lives, the millions of moments, the decisions and accidents, the love and hate, the joy and pain, all compressed into one body, one machine. I understood then. Every clock contains all possible lives, all the infinite potential of existence compressed into the ticking, the tocking. I was the keeper of those lives. But the more I understood, the more I began to slip. The breath became ragged, the tick too heavy, the tock too sharp. The gears ground against each other, too tight, too forceful, until I could no longer breathe with them. I started to forget. The idea of me began to fade, like sand slipping through fingers. Who had taken the hit? What was a hit? Was there ever a human? Was I ever human? Or had I always been this mechanism? This clock? Had I dreamed of humanity while asleep in my brass body? Was I born out of time, or was time born out of me? I could feel the fracture then, the thing that separated me from reality, the wall between clock and world, the boundary that once seemed so solid, but now it was crumbling. The face of the clock cracked. A hand, human, mine, reached through the fracture. It was strange, a ghostly thing, not entirely real. It couldn't be me. It couldn't be me, but it felt like it. It was as though I was reaching for myself from another reality, trying to pull myself out, trying to escape. But I couldn't move. I was frozen. The hand was me, but not me. Time doesn't move. Time is what moves you. I looked through the crack and saw my own room, my body, sitting on the couch, mouth slack, eyes vacant, watching nothing, being watched by the ticking thing. Me. I understood then. The true horror. I was still there. I hadn't gone anywhere. I had become a permanent part of this ancient mechanism. A cog, a gear, a tick, a tock. Every time that clock ticked in the real world, that was me. Still inside, still pushing time forward for everyone else. I couldn't escape. I couldn't even remember when I had ever been human, or if I was even supposed to be. I had become time. I had become the pulse of existence itself. You're hearing this now, but I never left. This voice you hear, it's not mine anymore. It's the echo of a tick in your own perception. It's the gear of reality whispering back. It's me, still caught in the rhythm, still a part of this machine, this infinite cycle. Every word you hear, every thought you have, is a part of the mechanism that carries you through time, that moves you forward and backward, through moments you'll never remember. You live your life unaware of this endless cycle, this hum beneath everything you know. But now, you can feel it, can't you? Check the clock on your wall. Watch it breathe. The movement of the second hand, the turn of the hour. It's not just the passage of time. It's life. It's movement. It's me. You might already be inside. You might already be caught in the gears.